Hello everyone, welcome back to Be the Whole You. My name is Gulveg, and it's that time once again. We're going to take a look at the stars above and the tarot below, and take a look and see how best we can leverage this lunar energy. This particular lunar energy, this particular new moon, is also a solar eclipse, and a very powerful one at that. It's on April 8th, 2024, and this is an exact conjunction between the sun, the moon, and Chiron, which is an asteroid that is known in astrology as the wounded healer. All of these are at 19 degrees in Aries, but it is not the only conjunction. The conjunction between the sun, the moon, and Chiron are a exact conjunction, meaning that they're all exactly at 19 degrees, but conjunctions more or less are considered to be within about 10 degrees. So we also have the North Node, which is also in conjunction to Chiron, the sun, and the moon. And the North Node is what we're moving towards. And in our birth chart, it's associated with our soul's purpose, our mission. And then we also have Mercury, which is in retrograde right now, which is at 24 degrees in Aries. So all of these energies are combining together to create a very interesting and rather intense energy. So Mercury in retrograde, if you've been following astrology for any length of period of time, you've probably run across the fact that a lot of folks look at Mercury in retrograde as being kind of a bummer because it can create miscommunications, it slows down technology and travel, it can create travel delays, it can create miscommunication, technology failures, emails not going through, mail getting lost, that type of thing. It's said that Mercury, when it goes retrograde, is going into the underworld. And this is going to be important here in a second because we have a lot of underworld energy in this solar eclipse. Coincidentally, the solar eclipse is considered to be the biggest astrological event of the year. The second largest astrological event of the year only happens on 2 weeks later, on April 20th/21st. And that's when Jupiter and Uranus conjunct. And we're going to talk about that here in a second. So back to Mercury retrograde. When it goes into the underworld, it's said that this is the time to pause. It's the time to reflect. It's the time to let some things go that need to be allowed to let go. The underworld is the place where we go for both wisdom. It is the realm of potential, and it is the realm where things go after they die. So when Mercury goes into retrograde, he brings with him anything that needs to be tidied up, anything that needs to be allowed to let go. Also, this is supposed to be a very good time for reflecting, meditating, to get clear on certain things, but even though it's not typically the best time to start something or to respond. So even though new moons are typically seen as a good time to take action towards a new beginning, this new moon is more a good time to strategize. Because as we're going to see here, as the moon moves forward, because the moon moves a lot quicker than any of these other planets. So as the moon moves forward and it moves towards Taurus, it's going to be revealing layers of clarity as it goes through and it aligns with these other planets. And then when Mercury comes out of retrograde on April 25th, he's going to come out of the underworld with all of this wisdom, all of this clarity. And when he comes out of the underworld, and also then around that same time, about a week later, Venus goes into Taurus. She comes out of Aries and she comes into Taurus, where she's going to be a lot happier. And Venus is about wealth and material security, a little bit of luck, beauty, that sort of thing. And so things are going to be a little bit more gentler at the end of the month or the beginning of May. So with that being said, I know we haven't pulled any cards yet, but with just that mix, I think it's very safe to say that this is more of a time to pause, to strategize, to witness, to take stock, to journal, to get clear, but it's not necessarily the time to leap just yet. It's like the cat before it leaps and it gets its footing first. It's like that. So allow yourself to get some footing. And with Aries being such a kind of impetuous energy, like it's the very first sign in the zodiac, it's associated with pioneering spirit and getting things started, which is really great when you're strategizing for new beginnings, because you're going to feel a little bit more emboldened to think big, to think outside of the realms of the boxes that we so often put ourselves in. We're going to feel a little bit more courageous to take leaps into the unknown. But it doesn't mean that it's quite ready just yet to do so. If you can pause until the end of the month to make big decisions or to take bold action, I would recommend doing so. Now, if you're in a crisis situation or something that just cannot wait, obviously, don't procrastinate things that it's where you absolutely have to make a move. But if you can put something off, if it's not absolutely urgent, then waiting until the last week of April or at least the beginning of May, you're going to probably find that you're going to be happy that you did so. So with that being said, to get a better understanding of how this is going to affect us, I thought it would be best to explore the mythology of Chiron itself. Chiron is known as the wounded healer. I personally find this figure to be one of the most interesting figures in Greek mythology. And I think that his story, just a brief overview of that story, is a wonderful metaphor to understand how this energy of this eclipse is going to feel and how it's going to affect our lives. I think that this story can really create a lot more, it's going to explain it a lot more concisely than anything that I can say on my own. So, Chiron was the progeny, he was the son of, I'm not sure if I'm saying this right, I think it's Philyra, she was a nymph, and Kronos, who was a Titan. And so they both had shape shifted into a horse when they coupled. And whether or not this was a coupling that was, consensual or not, that seems to be up to a debate. But either way, when they coupled, they were a horse. And so when Chiron was born, he was half man and half horse. So he was known as a centaur. But it was very interesting that he's not like the other centaurs. So most of the centaurs, they have the body and torso of a man, and then from the waist down and to their backside, they're a horse. Chiron was different from the other centaurs. If we take a look at really ancient sculptures, he's depicted as having the full frontal body of a man. So he had the front legs of a man, he had the front torso of a man, but then coming out of his backside is the horse torso and rear, and he's got the back haunches. So he was different in that way, and he also had a very different demeanor than a lot of the other centaurs. So the centaurs are kind of known for being kind of rough and rowdy, and Chiron wasn't like that at all. When he was born, Philyra looked at him as an abomination because of his differences in appearance, because of this half horse, half human. And Kronos didn't want anything to do with him because he was considered a bastard child. He was outside of, marriage or wedlock. And so because of this, he didn't fit in anywhere. And his mother, Philyra, left him out in the wild to let the wild take him to, essentially she assumed that he would die. And he was found by the god Apollo. And Apollo is the god associated with the sun. And this is one of the reasons why I think this eclipse is such a good this story is such a good metaphor for this eclipse. So Apollo finds him and takes him in, saves his life, And he then is underneath the tutelage of Apollo and Apollo's grand court. So he had many teachers himself, and he then becomes the master teacher of other masters and other master teachers. So he becomes a teacher of great warriors like Achilles, as well as great heroes as Asclepius, who ends up becoming known as the god of modern medicine. So needless to say, he was a really good teacher. And what's so beautiful about this part of the story is we can see this figure who, from the most alienated roots, becomes a leader, becomes respected. And he rises up through his own merit and through his own hard work and through his own, I would have to say, probably his own dignity and self-respect, despite how different he truly was from anyone, that he didn't let those differences cause him to act alienated, that he presented himself in a way that where he gained respect. And in order to do that, one must first have a great deal of self-respect. So I think that that's a really wonderful metaphor right there. And in a minute, I'm going to talk about how Apollo and how Chiron was saved by Apollo, how that plays out in the metaphor with the eclipse. But before I do so, I want to jump forward into Chiron's story. Chiron then gets accidentally shot in the foot by an arrow that's poisoned with the venom of the blood of a hydra. And this is supposed to be absolutely fatal. He's half immortal though, because his father is Kronos. And he is a very skilled healer. So he does live, but he lives with great agony. And so instead of living with this great agony, he decides to trade in his mortality to free Prometheus. At the time, Prometheus was being punished by Zeus because he had given fire to humanity, and he stole it from Zeus, and or Zeus's court. And so for that theft, he was punished. And though his punishment, because he was immortal, was to be strapped to a rock, and an eagle came and ate his liver every day. And because he's immortal, his liver would then regenerate, and the next day he would have to be tortured again. I mean, this is like really, it's really dark. I mean, pretty psychopathic stuff. But in any case, that is the myth. And so the only way that Prometheus could be freed, according to Zeus, was if one of the immortals were to trade in their life, their immortality, for Prometheus. And so then because of this, because of Chiron's sacrifice of his mortality, Prometheus was then freed. And Zeus was very touched by this sacrifice that Chiron gave, and then exalted him into the sky, and that's where we get the constellation of Centaurus. So, nice story, right? So the metaphor here is, first of all, Apollo saves Chiron. And I think it's, there's two death and rebirth that happens in this metaphor. We have the first one where Chiron was saved from a certain death as an infant from the sun. And then the second time that he was, resurrected, he was resurrected, and then he became part of the sky. Interesting enough, when he was, after he died, it said in some of the scripts that I was reading that he is one of the few gods that can go between the worlds, that can travel to the underworld and travel to Mount Olympus, to the realm of the gods. He's one of the few that can do that. And Mercury is one of the other few that can do that. That's also something that's important for this eclipse. So we have two death and rebirths that happen, and this eclipse is all about death and rebirth. So Apollo then saves Chiron. In this eclipse, we have Chiron and the moon and the sun perfectly together in Aries, in the warrior sign. Is it possible that Chiron which represents our deepest, most core wounds. These are the wounds that shape our personal development, because our persona, our identities are not just, they're not just random. You know, there's also, you know, of course, the whole part about genetics and such, but a big part of our personalities and our identity, it derives from how we relate to our shadows. And this is one of the reasons why shadow work and why shadow work is so important, and why shadows should not be demonized. So the parts of ourselves that are based in self-doubt or self-judgment, or you know, the parts of us that are angry or sad, these are not, even though they're inconvenient, they are not to be demonized, because it's how we relate to those that sometimes gives us some of our most potent gifts that we are very proud of. So a person that may feel like they had to prove themselves their entire life might also have developed a lot of discipline, a lot of tenacity, and have a very good work ethic. But in order to be fulfilled, in order to be happy, they first have to finish the composting of that shadow from which the seeds of their most potent gifts was derived from in the first place. So it's very important at this time to have compassion for these shadows that come up, because with Mercury going deep into the underworld, and Mercury is not just visiting the underworld and like, hey, like with Chiron, the sun and the moon all going into the underworld, he's gonna take a very deep dive into the underworld. So this is a very intense Mercury retrograde. And so whatever it is that comes up for you, most likely are going to be shadows that are going to be like right up in your face. There's not going to be a lot that we can do to hide from them. And so it's really important that we are very gentle with ourselves at this time, that we have a lot of compassion for ourselves and a lot of patience for everybody else around us, because most likely they're going to be feeling some sort of tension and pressure internally as well. And we don't know what it is that they're dealing with. We don't know what kind of wounds that they're churning inside. So it's important to have some patience and some compassion at this time. So Apollo because of this association with our sun, it's associated with our identity. If we can take this opportunity to take a look at these shadows and ask ourselves, with things being as they are, what is the most healthy decision that I can make? Notice I did not say kind, because kindness a lot of times is associated with giving of the self so much that it's a deprecation of the self, that we just then become a martyr. And I do think that because this eclipse is finishing a cycle that was started last October with the eclipse in Libra, and we've been in this Libra Aries axis this entire time. So if you've been following these videos, you've been seeing how this axis has been this ping-ponging back and forth of the right of the individual versus the rights of the community. It's been this ongoing deepening of what is boundaries for us, and how do we fortify those boundaries, and how do we say no when we mean no, and yes when we mean yes. Like, how much are we willing to give, and what does reciprocation look like for us? All of those have been deep themes since last October. And now with this eclipse, we are finishing that up. And so with that being finished up, it's requiring that we are having a deep excavation of who and what we think we are. So this new beginning is going to be probably it will eventually become one of the most potent beginnings that we may be able to remember. But just like it's like building a house, we first have to excavate. You know, you have to have a level ground in order to build a house. And in this case, we're building a house with a basement because we're digging down, and in order to be able to build back up. And that's exactly what's happening with this. So Apollo can rescue Chiron if we're willing to let go aspects of our identity and aspects of how we relate to others that just simply are outmoded. It doesn't mean that we're amputating these things. What it means is that we're understanding why we do those things. And we can perhaps even have compassion for why we do these things. And then we can decide that we can keep some of the gifts and traits that we find admirable about ourselves, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to continuously adopt these patterns of relating to others that are not serving us anymore. So some of the things that might be coming up to the surface, folks who are, in our society, we typically have givers and we have takers, and that's because of how dualistic our humanity still thinks. So we still think in very black and white terms. It's either all or nothing, and this is actually a trauma response. So so we have a lot of folks who are more takers, and then we have a lot of folks who are the givers. And this is one of the reasons why we have codependency is such an issue in our society. And so the folks who are the takers, that stuff's going to come up for them during this eclipse. They may find that some of the givers they've been taken from are not willing to give anymore. They may find that people are having more boundaries, and that may not feel very comfortable. They may find that they've actually been less generous than what they think they are. There may be less of an opportunity to justify certain actions. And for the givers, they're going to be faced with their own shadows. Why do they give so much? Are they trying to prove themselves when there is nothing to prove? What about the concept of worthiness? Shame might come up. Overcompensating for some sort of perceived deficit might come up. Self-doubt, that type of thing. Basically, a lack of love in any way that we have for ourselves is something that's going to come up. And Apollo, our identity, is asking for an upgrade. The reason why this is one of the reasons is that this is not a good time for new beginnings right now is because whatever new beginning it is that we're being asked to step into is going to require this upgrade. And solar eclipses are like a upgrade to the operating system. You wouldn't want to download new software in your computer as it's trying to update its operating system. You would wait until the operating system has been updated, and then you would bring in new software. If you're trying to bring in new software while that update is happening, it's probably not going to work. And if it does, it's probably going to be a mess. So that's why it's best to wait until the solar eclipse and the Mercury goes out of retrograde, wait until the end of the month, when we now know what the new operating system is, when we know how we're being asked to change, how we're being asked to navigate, and what parts of our identity are being upgraded, and in what ways we're being asked to communicate and relate to others in a very different way. So those things are going to be things that are going to come up to the surface, and when we're clear on that and we take that bold action that Aries allows us to put those things in action. It's not just having the clarity, which will come over the next few weeks, but it's also Aries, the new beginning that Aries is preparing us for. Aries itself is such a fiery energy that we will then be more emboldened to take those steps going forward later on. So because we'll have more courage, it will embolden us to be able to say, you know what, this is hard, but I can do it. It's going to give us that extra push that we need in order to do the hard things that are required so that our future is brighter. Let's see here. What else so let's talk a little bit about this Jupiter and Uranus conjunction at the end of the month. So it's in Taurus, so that means that the changes that are taking place, at least an aspect of them, are going to be changes that are going to affect our material world, our job, our home, perhaps even health, and our wealth, our money, like our livelihood, our income. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, because we also have the North Node that is part of the eclipse, right? And that is what we're moving towards. Our success in all of this, it really depends on how much we're willing to upgrade ourselves, upgrade our communication, to learn new communication skills, nonviolent communication. How do we have conflict with respect? That is going to be a huge thing, because with all of this Aries energy, and Aries is associated with Mars, which is the planet of, it's a planet of passion, courage, but also of conflict and war. So there will be a lot of conflict between individuals. Folks are going to have hot heads. So how can we utilize more respectful ways in order to resolve conflict? And those challenges are going to teach us how to do so in the future. They're going to teach us new ways of relating that are going to embolden us, enliven us, and at the end of the day, it will be worth it. If we resist all of this, we're just going to make our life harder. So human beings typically resist change. Most folks are not going to be comfortable with this energy. And a lot of folks are going to resist it. They're not going to go with the flow at all. And for those folks, they're going to end up actually in the long term making their lives more difficult. So instead of distracting ourselves with certain addictions, and I'm not just talking the big ones, but even like sugar, work, TV, that kind of thing, distracting ourselves, digging our feet in the sand and saying, no, I'm, like, this is how it is. I don't want to let go of this. I don't want to change. All of that, it's just going to make things a lot more difficult, because change is going to happen. With Jupiter and Uranus and Taurus, with the solar eclipse happening, change is inevitable. So we can either ride that wave, or we can stand on the beach and let it hit us. So, if you ride the wave, it can take you to new shores. If you stand in its way, it's going to crush you. So ride the wave, my friends. Ride the wave. Don't resist it. It may not be very comfortable, but it's definitely going to be something that at the end of the day, we're going to be better off going with the flow than trying to stop the tide. All of this eclipse also is activating Pluto. And I personally think that this eclipse really is setting off the whole Pluto transit. And Pluto is the planet of death and rebirth. It's at 1 degree in Aquarius. Aquarius is associated with Taurus. Or not Taurus, I'm sorry. 1 degree in Aquarius. Aquarius is associated with Uranus. And Uranus and Jupiter are conjuncting. So Uranus is the planet of change. And so we have the planet of change, and we have the sign that's associated with Uranus, Aquarius, that is being affected by the planet of death and rebirth. Change is going to happen. And it's at 1 degree, meaning it's a new beginning. And then the North Node is also affected by all of that, because it's conjunct with all of this eclipse. So newness is in the air, but we are going through birthing pains in order to, because this new beginning is going to be so big for us collectively as well as individually, then we are going to be going through some labor pains in order, or I would even say growing pains. When you're a kid and your limbs would ache, it's like that. We're going through growing pains to get to this new beginning. And there might be some, especially with Jupiter and Uranus in Taurus, with the changes to our material life, some of the wounds may be triggered by the fact that a lot of us may be feeling uprooted. But it is going to be temporary. It isn't going to last forever. And, like I said, going into May is even going to be somewhat intense, but it's not going to nearly be as charged as it is this month. So things are going to start softening a little bit when we go into May. So it's not going to last forever, and you are going to be okay. I absolutely believe that. I know in my heart of hearts that you're going to be okay. There's going to be this itchiness because Saturn and Mars are going to be conjuncting in Pisces. This Mars is associated with Aries. We've got a lot going on in Aries, like we just talked about, and Saturn is the planet of limitation, and it's also the planet of time and karma and structure. So Mars is like the gas, Saturn is the brakes. And so there's going to be this itchiness, like I said, where we're just going to want to do something already because the energy is going to be like pressurized and we just want to release the pressure. One of the good ways that you can do that is get outside and walk, jog, exercise, breathe, move your body. Moving your body is going to help to move that energy, especially if you don't know exactly what to do in order to change your situation. Not all is going to be clear during the eclipse, and then but like I said, going into the end of the month in May, things are going to become a lot more clear, and clarity will come with bold action and direction. And also Mars and Saturn are conjunct in Pisces, and Pisces is the intangible. So whatever action it is that you're being itchy to take, it's very possible that even if you're to take that action, that it's not going to lead to tangible results. So don't waste your time. Spend more of your time instead to reflect on what is it that you need to feel safe and secure in your life. What is it that's going to help to support your health? What relationships, dynamics, environments are detrimental to your health, either your physical health, mental health, emotional health, or spiritual health, whatever it might be. Where are the parasitic drains of your energy lying? And when I say parasitic drains, I'm not talking derogatory towards anybody. I'm not calling anybody a parasite. But a parasitic drain is something that happens typically without us knowing it. And it just kind of siphons. And when we have these toxic dynamics, we feel less vital, we feel less empowered, and it's very easy to go into victimhood when we are in those kind of dynamics. So this is giving us all the information that we need. If you've been following my videos for any length of time, you know that since October, I've been talking about this balance between the self and the community. And now everything's coming to a head. And you get the opportunity to create a whole new blueprint for your life in this eclipse. You get to, it's almost like any kind of visualization boards or anything that you created in January, you might want to revisit those. You can totally update them. You can treat this eclipse like January 1st, where you get the opportunity to take a look at what it is that you want to build for your life. Ask yourself what needs to be excavated, what needs to be cleared in order for that to happen, and what needs to be modified. Maybe it doesn't need to be completely gone, maybe it doesn't need to be cleared, but perhaps a new relationship needs to be made, perhaps new boundaries need to be set, perhaps expectations need to be upgraded. This is the time to create that structure. This is the time to create the blueprint. In Aries, because Aries is the warrior, before a general goes into war, he's going to create a strategy. And I'm not saying we're going to war, that's not what I'm saying, but I'm just saying that if you're going to go into a new beginning, don't do it haphazardly, especially when the new beginning is such a big deal. Like whatever new beginning it is for you is going to have a ripple effect to probably create some really big things. So this is the time to create that vision for yourself. It's it can be a very potent and empowering time, even if it's not completely comfortable. If we're willing to be courageous enough to be honest with ourselves and to be boldly honest with others. And when I say boldly honest, it is with respect. One thing that I can say that might be helpful in having some of these kind of communications is to focus on behavior, not how we interpret the behavior. So for example, if it's a roommate situation and they are continuously invading your private space, instead of interpreting what that invasion means, which is being disrespectful, we can just say, you know, when you come into my room without asking, it feels to me that it is an invasion of my space and I feel disrespected, instead of saying, stop disrespecting me. So action and how it makes you feel, and saying that you're owning your feelings versus just going into and making accusations on how you interpret that feeling. So so in my example, a person is owning their feelings. They're not projecting it out onto somebody else, saying that that's what they mean by those actions. So I hope that is clear. That's something that can really make a big difference for how we communicate things, because there are going to be irritations and frustrations that are going to bubble up, and having verbiage that focuses on behavior versus on how we interpret behavior has completely revolutionized my own relationships. So please do take that and run with it, and use it as well as you can. So let's take a look. So with all of that being said, let's pull a few cards and just see if there's any additional information that we can get on how best to utilize this solar eclipse on April 8th, 2024. How best may we utilize this solar eclipse on April 8th, 2024? All right, well, despite all of the intense energy, I mean, the cards that come out are pretty good. So I think that that is just a, it's like reassurance that, that despite the fact that, like, for some of us, some very difficult things might come up, that it really is going to be okay. The very first card that comes up is Temperance. So one of the ways that we can utilize this is to master your emotions. Temperance card is not just about balance. It's about creating something completely new by mixing duality. So in one cup you have shadows, the other cup you have light, and when you're mixing them, you're creating something completely new. This is the quintessential symbol of healing, because especially psychological and emotional healing isn't about amputating the shadow. It's about taking lemons and making lemonade. It's about, you know, with things being as they are, what is the most healthy thing that I can do? How can I reframe this? How can I understand this? How can I relate to these experiences that I have had that have created trauma, that have created self-doubt? How can I relate to these parts of myself in a way that has more compassion and that might be more productive? And in doing so, that alchemy that we create within ourselves will allow us to go forward. Now, there's going to be a predisposition to put the cart before the horse, but we're going to be ready to move, which is a really, really big deal. Despite the fact that, you know, the universe is just like, not yet, not yet, not yet. You know, wait for it, wait for it. It's really is, that is a better alternative to the universe saying go, and we aren't ready to, we're not willing to. So, you know, it's good that this alchemy within us is creating a courageous spirit where we're ready to go forward. The biggest thing here, these two cards together, we have the Ten of Pentacles, which is about reciprocation and generosity. It happens when everybody is getting what they need. And it's also about what we inherit. So then we also have the Seven of Wands, which is about self-defense. It's about defending ourselves between of the projections of others. So some of the stuff that might come up might be things that we've inherited. And so then we will need to create a system, an understanding. There's something about our egos, our identity, that will need to be upgraded in order for us to defend our right to have a fair shake, and to and to defend what is rightly ours. Inheritance. So what is rightly yours? What is it that you deserve, whether or not it's accolades or validation or space to have your own feelings or actual monetary wealth? What is rightly yours? And then from that space of, we've learned to master our emotions better, we're emboldened to take bold action to move forward and to defend what is rightly ours. And knowing that and coming from that place of like, what is rightly ours, when we can get what we need and what is rightly ours, we can actually be a bigger benefit to our community. We can be a better benefit to those who truly are healthy relationships. So that's another thing too with the Seven of Wands and Ten of Pentacles. It's asking us, who is actually in your inner circle, and do they belong there? You know, who are the people that where support is available, and where are people where it might be better to keep them a little bit on the periphery of your inner circle, or perhaps they don't get a circle. And this leads to new potential. Seven of Cups is about so many opportunities, so much possibility, that we're almost overwhelmed with all of the different possibilities. So, you know, any kind of restriction that we're feeling at this time, know that, you know, there's a pattern: restriction, expansion, restriction, expansion. Any kind of restriction that we're feeling at this time, it will expand. And when it expands, with the birthing pains of the restriction, the contraction that we might be feeling, and in that pressurized environment, we can take the coal and we can make diamonds. We can create something useful out of parts of ourselves that we at one point may have deemed unuseful. And then when the energy shifts and there's expansion, that new awareness, those new habits, those new beliefs, those new perspectives, those new relationships or updated relationships are going to provide a whole new horizon, whole new opportunities, whole new possibilities. So I hope you guys found that helpful. I know that I did. And love to hear about your experiences in the comments below. Like, how are you experiencing this eclipse energy? How's it been feeling for you? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, it'd be very helpful if you hit that like, subscribe, bell icon, all the things, in order to appease the algorithm gods so that other people can also find these videos too. All right, folks, I look forward to hearing from you, and I'll see you back here in a couple of weeks. We're going to take a look at the full moon. It'll be an interesting one. Bye-bye.